Hey folks, welcome to Bootstrap Cyber's very first Community Spotlight interview. In this series, we'll be sharing real stories and lessons from people working on the business side of cybersecurity. That includes sales, marketing, customer success, recruiting, RevOps, and more. Today's guest is Rachel Levy Sarfin, currently a cybersecurity content marketer with a background in journalism and a knack for really engaging your audience. She's worked across cybersecurity, AI, DevOps, and more. She brings a smart, thoughtful approach to every piece of content she creates. In this episode, we're going to get into her journey in cybersecurity, how she approaches learning technical subjects, her take on content strategy, and how she's using tools like ChatGPT in her workflow. So let's get into it. So first of all, Rachel, welcome and thank you for being here. I can't wait to get your insights. You work in the same field as me, content marketing, in B2B SaaS cybersecurity. That's what we are doing right now. Can you tell us a little bit about your current role, what work you're doing right now?
Sure. So at the moment, I'm working on a contract with a financial services company.
Cool. And where do you live? What part of the world?
So we are based in the suburbs of Toronto.
Very cool. That's not too far. I'm down in Maryland, East Coast, US. Um, so tell us something fun about you or hobbies or interests outside of your work.
I have a dad jokes newsletter. I send one dad joke every single weekday. I have been doing since, let's say, March of 2024, and I really enjoy it. It's something that brings me joy, and I'd like to think it brings others joy too.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to have to get on your email list for that. I can always use a laugh. Always helps break up the day. So let's get into your career journey a little bit, how you got to where you are. So how did you get into content marketing? Like what drew you to it? And how did you get started?
That is a question with kind of a long-winded answer. So I started off as a journalist back in 2012 after having done another pivot from another field entirely. I found a job covering B2B tech in Canada, and the publication that I worked for went under, and then it went under again. So content marketing seemed to be a good way to use the skills or the knowledge that I had learned, I should say, the knowledge that I had learned working as a journalist covering B2B tech.
Definitely. I can totally tell that your skills transfer and actually help you a lot in this field because I'm sure you know, and we'll get into it, that content marketing is not just writing. There's a lot more to it, and we could talk about some of that as we get into this interview. Um, so how do you, when you're writing about deeply technical products and have for a long time, so how do you approach learning about the product and getting up to speed and being able to talk about it with some, confidence?
It comes down to research and also asking questions, because there is research that you can do on your own, but having subject matter experts available is also incredibly helpful. And especially if those subject matter experts are willing to explain things in a way that makes sense and that, it's in plain English. So I think that combination of the self-research so that when you go to speak to a subject matter expert, you have a basis, that's very helpful.
I would totally agree. The SMEs are extremely valuable getting there. Of course, I can nerd out and do research all day, but getting someone's real point of view and voice is extremely helpful and it helps you round out the edges, so to speak.
For sure.
I would totally agree with. So let's talk about your content strategy and process. In your words, what's the real value of content in B2B SaaS? Like, what's the value to the company? How important is it?
I would say it's very important because it is what communicates your brand's value and how you help customers. So when we talk about writing, there's the copywriting, which is designed to make people take action. So it's what you see on landing pages. You're getting somebody to click on something, you're getting them excited about a product. But long form content, which is what I specialize in, that's about educating someone. It's about speaking to their pain points and saying, this is a problem that you have. You might know about it. You might not know about it. You don't have to be afraid. Like, we're not trying to alarm you, but is this something you should be thinking about? And this is a way that you can solve it.
Right. Because we're generally speaking to a very educated, smart audience, right? And we're not trying to do fear mongering like you're speaking about, but we are trying to educate around the product we're representing. That sounds great to me. Have you noticed any trends or changes in content marketing lately? Or is there anything you feel like should change about the way we do things?
So I think one of the things that we are taught that I'm hearing a lot of and reading a lot about is the emergence of AI and its impact on content marketing. That I think in the very early days, we're still trying to figure out how this is going to affect things. It's definitely going to affect the way people search. It is affecting the way people search. We're seeing a lot of zero-click searches. And search is not my specialty. I do content writing, but it affects everything that everyone in the marketing department does, because people are going to ChatGPT or Perplexity or other models for searches, and that where are these search engines getting information from? Some of them are being trained on internet data, and it depends on what you're putting out there as to whether you'll be found.
Yes, I am hearing that too, and it's perplexing. It seems like a lot of things align with the old way of doing SEO, meaning you have your messaging and your content on your website and the AI will find that. But it's also picking up on other things is what I'm hearing. It's picking up on like Quora, it's picking up on what people say on LinkedIn. So it's very interesting how that's evolving and changing. Yeah, how you get found. So like you said, I also am not an SEO expert, but I am paying attention to people who are talking about that. That's a very interesting change. Um, so what do you see companies getting wrong with content? Is there anything along those lines?
For sure. One of the things I think is that in many cases, companies can lose sight of their audience and sometimes make it all about them and the product. And your audience isn't going to pay attention to you if they don't feel that you are speaking to them. If they don't feel that you understand their needs and that you can solve their problem. To your earlier question about another trends in content marketing, something that I had heard last year a few times was that some companies had decided to not do white papers anymore. And I don't know that that's necessarily the direction to go, because maybe it's not that, maybe your audience doesn't want another white paper that doesn't speak to them. Maybe if you wrote a white paper that it made it clear that you understood their needs and you understood their problem, then maybe they would read it.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's another thing. It's not a matter of putting out content. It's a matter of putting out the right content that's relevant. So
Yes.
that is something that I think many companies, not just in cybersecurity, but also in B2B SaaS and B2B in general, they might have lost sight of, that you need to solve a customer's problem and you need to connect with that customer.
Yes. Wholeheartedly agree. I still see this happening, even though I feel like we should all know better by now. Um, I would never say the white paper is dead. I will say they're becoming less popular, but in my mind, in my experience, is, I think, is partly because the white papers have become less high quality, less helpful, less people they want to get something out of that download, right? They're looking to learn something, they're looking for fresh stats and data, they're looking for something, and you have to provide that to them. It can't just be like a long blog, right? So, right, I get what you're saying. It's really about the value of the content, not so much the format. And you need to be able to communicate that. That's where the copywriting comes in, I guess, is to help people understand that, yes, you actually do want to download this one. This is actually something you could use. So, yep, I still see a lot of that going on too. And it feels, like we need to start moving ahead in a more positive direction when it comes to our content, be more choosy about what we're putting out there. So content marketers, we don't live in a vacuum. We need guidance and direction from leadership. So what do we really need from them?
That is, we need their buy-in to create content, and not just to create content, but to ensure that subject matter experts are on board with being involved in the content creation process. I can tell you that I have worked at organizations where the subject matter experts did not want to be involved, and that hurt the content creation process. And I have been at other organizations where there was a champion in the C-suite who made sure that the subject matter experts were on board with creating content. And that in this particular case, this person was really enthusiastic about participating in the content creation process. And that was so helpful because subject matter experts had these very unique insights. They are talking to customers so they can tell you, well, this is what, I'm seeing in the industry. They have ideally the product knowledge. I mean, if you don't, you have a problem, but they have the product knowledge and they have the industry knowledge. So they can say, this is what I've seen in my X number of years in the industry. These are, the things that are going to affect our customers 18 months down the line, 12 months down the line, a year down the line. So those insights are so valuable, and the C-suite needs to understand that, and they need to champion content marketing.
I would totally agree. If you're getting friction from leadership, it's a non-starter. You're not going to go anywhere. And the SMEs are so valuable and so helpful. So yes, definitely need that to align and need that support. Do you have a biggest challenge you faced in this kind of work? Either as a freelancer or on the job?
That is, I don't know if it's the biggest challenge. There have been many challenges. To go back to what we were just discussing, one of the challenges I faced is the lack of buy-in from the C-suite or from the people who are stakeholders, that they want something created, but they aren't willing to invest the time or energy to explain what it is that they want. The thing is that I am not a mind reader. No one in any kind of creative role is a mind reader. Maybe you can say, okay, well, yes, we've done things in this situation like this, but you can't necessarily rely on what you've done in the past to guide a current project, because maybe the requirements are different and maybe you're targeting a different audience. So that has been a major challenge, is a lack of stakeholder buy-in and a lack of clarity. As a freelancer, I can talk about a number of challenges. I think one of which is that some solopreneurs or some companies, they don't have the processes in place to work with a freelancer. And that's several problems in and of itself, because if you don't have a process to assign someone a task, or if you don't have a process, you don't have, let's say, templates for content creation, like you want a blog to be written a certain way, it helps to have a template. Um, you don't have payment systems set up properly. So the freelancer is waiting for months to get paid. That is not a sustainable solution for anyone, especially not for the freelancer. So that's kind of just a sampling of the challenges I faced as a content marketer, both in-house and as a freelancer.
Definitely, I feel you. So you're kind of leading into my next question is I see you actually post about this a lot on LinkedIn and I follow your content, but you talk a lot about the content process and involving stakeholders and how that ideally really should work. So what's your idea of a good content process?
I am so glad you asked that. So ideally, it starts with having a clear content strategy where the content you're producing is aligned to business goals. You're not just producing content for content's sake, because that is a waste of everyone's time and no one is going to read it. And then you're going to have an executive saying, well, this content marketing program is a waste of time and money. Your content has to start where you have to start is alignment with business goals. And also a clear understanding of your audience. If you aren't clear for who you're writing for, then no one is going to care. And that is sad and, again, a waste of time. So those two things really have to be in place. A great content process, it starts with it starts by building a process so that you know who is going to do what and when. It can be very helpful to have a content calendar. I know that there's content calendars can have their limitations because let's say you have an event come up and it disrupts everything. The pandemic being an excellent example. But I think it's also about being agile and pivoting and saying, okay, this is a thing we can put on there are certain topics we can, put on the back burner because something else has come up and disrupted everything completely. So having that agility is also important. And another part of the content process is also, like I said, having those roles in place. You have, a writer, and ideally you have an editor who is separate and apart from a stakeholder so that when the writer finishes their work, it can go to an editor who understands things like who the audience is. Does this follow the style guide? And style guide is another thing that you should have in place.
Yeah.
Is this going to align with our messaging? Messaging being another thing that you should have in place. And then also having the stakeholders be involved in that review process so that things are accurate and that they reflect what the company does. So, and a clear content distribution strategy as well. So those, I think, would be the elements, roughly speaking.
Yes, definitely. So let me see if I can sum up. So you need a plan, but you need to remain agile. Everybody has to know what their role is in the process and be willing and able. And I forgot your last one. I feel like there was 4.
Also having a way to distribute the content.
Oh, distribution. And you should probably know that ahead of time, how you're going to distribute the content, right?
Yeah.
Excellent advice. Do you deal with content strategy yourself, or is that something you're not doing right now? Do you have any advice?
Yeah. So content strategy isn't something I have a lot of experience with. I have a little bit of experience with. It's an area I'm sort of exploring because I don't know if it's ever felt like it's been the right fit. But that being said, we're entering the age of AI. You could load a prompt into the large language model of your choice, and it's beginning to churn out stuff that is not half bad. So where humans fit into the process is guiding that strategy. So strategy, I think having the ability to create a content strategy, from what I understand, is becoming a key to remaining relevant in this era.
Excellent thought. Yes, I do feel that also is that as we use more AI tooling, we're also being asked to do more and grow more in our roles and become much more like the director and less of the I don't know, the I want to say minion, that's not it. More of the director and less of the, I guess, worker, writer, however you want to put that. More of the more human in the loop, more of your own brains in the process to make sure that the LLMs do what you need them to do and get you closer to that final draft and the final goal. So I did want to dig into some talk about AI just a little bit because everybody is talking about it and we are using it. How do you feel about Gen AI tools in general in content work?
So I can tell you, I do use them, not extensively, but I do use them. I use them as a writing assistant because I think that it can be sometimes helpful. Let's say you're looking to say something in a certain way and you can't quite come up with it. And so you can say to Chat GPT or your model of choice, I am writing let's say you are a content marketer and you have to create a blog post about identity access management that's geared for this audience on this specific topic. Let's say I'm looking for an introduction. Uh, you know, that can be helpful because you can go through it, and sometimes the generative AI model can come up with some interesting points. Maybe it's not necessarily the way you would have said, but you can take from those points and say, oh, that's a good way to say something. That's a phrase that maybe will resonate with my audience. So that can be helpful. I have used it to create outlines for personal blog posts, just to try to get a sense of like, well, is this the right way to say something? Is this the best order to put my thoughts into? So from that perspective, it can be helpful. There are other things that at this time, and it's obviously maturing very rapidly, that it can't do so well. It cannot seem to understand how many R's are in strawberry at this point in time. So, and I had
It's so weird.
I have asked, to write X number of words, and it either exceeds the count or does not even get close to meeting the count. So you have to be wary of the chat. I don't know. So be aware that what your output is, and if it matches what you need, and also be aware of hallucinations, because as we're seeing that some of these large language models are good at creating information that does not actually exist.
Yes, so many times. I've had to question the machine, where'd you get that from? And, it takes those human eyes. This sort of leads into the next question I feel like you've kind of already answered is what makes a human writer still essential is that you're still in the driver's seat. You're still making sure the end result is what you need it to be, and that there aren't hallucinations, that it is on the right voice, that it is capturing the right points and everything you need that piece of content to do. So I think if the human in the driver's seat doesn't know what they're doing, the machine alone is not going to create great results. At least that's been my experience as well.
I think you have really hit the nail on the head, because I received a cold email recently, which I'm pretty sure was generated by AI. I don't know. I don't know 100%, but I got the sense that it was. And the thing is, it was just vague. And wasn't really personalized. And I'm thinking, this is kind of sloppy, this is not the way that you attract customers. You attract customers by making them identify with you, that making them say, oh, I think you can help me. And that was just not the impression I got from this email. And, yeah, you could do that without using AI as well. So if your approach is to, maybe I will just draft an email without AI and send it to hundreds of people and hope for results, that isn't going to work either. So like you can't scale if you just, you're not going to get very far. Let's not even talk about scale if you don't have the right messaging to begin with.
Right. And then you wonder why you have poor response rates, right? I think we all get the emails, the messages. They're so generic and so irrelevant, and so something about it makes our spidey senses tingle. Or like, this doesn't even feel like it's written by a human. Right? I think we've all experienced that, and yeah, that's not a great approach. I have to agree. I don't respond to those. Like, I just don't. Well, I think we're getting close to wrapping it up. You've given a lot of great advice from your own experience. Do you have any specific advice for people who are looking to sort of break into content marketing, content writing, maybe even as a freelancer? Somebody who's trying to just get started. Where should they start? What can they do?
That is an excellent question. Because right now there are, something, whenever you're starting something new, there are going to be challenges. There are courses out there that you can take to pick up the basics, but it's also about understanding your subject matter. That is really crucial. If you want to write for a specific niche, let's say cybersecurity, you need to be able to understand the field. And I would also say that when it comes to being a freelancer, it's not just about the execution of the work. You can be great at what you do, but if you don't understand the business side of things, if you don't have good customer service skills, then you aren't going to get very far. And if you're not very good at getting clients, or you're like, well, I can just, have one client, that's fine. You can't rely on one client, because when something happens, that one client, then you have a problem. So being a freelancer is wearing a whole bunch of hats, and separate hats, because you're going to have to do your own marketing and your own billing. So at least at the beginning, unless you start outsourcing that stuff. But it's not just about doing the work. It's also a whole bunch of other things that you.
Right. It's running a business. That's something I've been learning since I started consulting over a year ago now. But yeah, it's definitely jumping into a whole different pool. You all of a sudden, you're a business owner. You're wearing many hats, like you said, and you have to find your own clients and make your own way. So there's a whole learning process on its own. But if you're willing to put in the time and effort, and learn, I think it's pretty open for those who are willing. Opportunities are there, is what I'm saying.
For sure.
All right. Let's wrap up for today. Thank you very much for being here and sharing your wisdom with the community. I will be seeing you more on LinkedIn, and we'll stay in touch. And have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. You as well. And thank you very much for having me, Laura.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.